So there's 5 sections. We're going to go through what each of the sections is. Right, so the first is metrics. Right. Anyone know who Edward Tufte or Tufte is?
Tufte University.
Sorry?
Is it connection with Tufte University? Or?
No. So he wrote this amazing book on visualizing data. And he has a lot of things about, like, before the first space shuttle exploded, right, they had this data on all the O-rings, on how they would act in different temperatures, right? And it was this table, and you look at the table, and it's impossible to understand what's going on. And sure enough, the shuttle exploded. And he takes the data, and he puts it in a graph. And when you graph, it says, and this is all the data from the table, the percent likelihood of this fails versus temperature. It goes like this, and this is where we launched. All the data was there, presented in a terrible way, and they didn't realize that if they launch in the temperature at whatever 30 degrees, this O-ring was going to fail and the shuttle was going to explode. So I spend a lot of time thinking about what metrics I'm going to present, so that someone looking at this who has no time to look at anything else gets a clear idea of how this project is going.
What's the name of that book again? Regardless of that.
So visual display quantitative information by
Tufte is his last name. If you Google it, you'll find tons of stuff. You don't even have to buy the book anymore. Because the book is actually really expensive for some reason. So anyway, I want people to know how things are going, and I want them to understand what I'm doing, right? So there's lots of ways to do it. I have a few examples here, right? So one way is, hey, I have a bunch of milestones that I'm going to shoot for, and then I have the target date, and then my current date in case it's changed, right? So in this case, I'm ahead of schedule. This might be on hold, and then I have a status of what's behind, right? And this. If I have 4 things to work on, this is a pretty easy way for me at a glance to see what's going on these 4 things. Right, so if I want to get 3 customers into production, I can have customer 1, 2, and 3, and I can have targets, and anyone looking at it has a pretty good idea of how it's going. Another example, right, is I can have percentages, right? And so if there's steps that I'm going through, and I don't even remember what these mean, right? But say I'm building a website, and I have to design the website, and then I build a static mock-up of it, and then I don't know, link it, and whatever, and ultimately it's done. Right? And if I have 4 of them, I can easily say, okay, well, this is where each one of them is. And this gives me a good idea of where everything is. It also gives me a good idea, potentially, about where the bottleneck is, right? I might see things marching along really easy, and then it hits 60%, and everything stops. Well, what's going on there? So there's lots of ways to do this. Another way is you can just have, how many numbers are there. And so there's lots of different ways. You figure out what numbers you think represent. I'm not the first one. No, the last one will say, right, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So if you think you have a lot of work, and you don't know what the metrics are, it's probably the first thing you should sit down and figure out. So, I said there's lots of different ways to do it. The trick is, all of you are young enough probably to never have actually read a newspaper. But if you do read a newspaper, right, usually the headline tells you everything you need to know. Right? Bob Bennett ousted in convention. You don't need anything more. Then if you read the first paragraph, it'll give you a little bit more information. Who, what, when, in one paragraph, and then you're like, well, why do you need to read the whole rest of the article? Well, the other article gives you more and more detail if you really are inclined. This is the headline. Someone looking at this should get the whole picture. If they want more detail, they'll continue to read. But this should be enough to represent what's going on. All right, so if you have people on your board and they're really busy, or you have Rob, and Rob has 17 companies that he's trying to meet status reports from, he might only have a few minutes, and he's gonna look at okay, I'm looking at the metrics. Metrics look like they're proceeding, look like they're on schedule. That's all I have time for. So I spend a lot of time on the metrics.